Element 9.1 General Requirements for Work Equipment. In this element, we will be discussing the different type of physical and design characteristic of the work equipment which can suit to our safety protocols at the workplaces. Moving forward, we're gonna first discuss the types of work equipment which we used at our workplaces. Note that in this element, the phrase work equipment will be used in very wide sense to include simple hand tools, for example, a hammer, screwdriver, or chisel, handheld power tools, for example, a portable electrical drill or circular saw, single machines, for example, a bench mounted abrasive wheel, photocopier, lathe, or compactor, mobile work equipment, a tractor or mobile crane, for example. Machine assembles, where several machines are linked together to form a more complex plant, such as a bottling plant. This broad use of the phrase work equipment is in keeping with the definition used in EU directives and in the UK, the Provision and Use of Work Equipment Regulations 1998. Perhaps the most important set of UK regulations relevant to this particular topic. We are gonna now discuss the suitability of work equipment at the workplaces. When an employer provides work equipment for use at work, that equipment must be suitable. This means it must be suitable for the task it is going to be used to perform. For example, a chisel is not appropriate for prising lids of tins. Second thing, environment and condition in which it is to be used. For example, a standard halogen spotlight is not suitable for use in flammable atmosphere because it can produce spark. Equipment must be carefully selected to ensure that it is suitable for the task and environment on the basis of manufacturer's information. In many regions of the world, there are regulations that require manufacturers to ensure that the equipment they produce meet basic safety standards. For example, in EU, the Machinery Directive 2006 established the basic safety standard that manufacturers are legally obliged to meet. Manufacturers are required to design and manufacture machineries so that it meets essential health and safety requirements. Create a technical file which should contain the information required to show that the product properly complies with the requirements of the directives that apply to it. Fix a conformite European mark to the equipment. You have seen in your daily life that if you buy any kind of equipment or tool, there is a CE mark on it. The CE mark shows that this equipment justified or follow all the standards of the European standards. Provide a written declaration of conformity for the purchaser and provide written information on the hazard, risk, and safe use and maintenance of the equipment. In the UK, a similar requirement is implemented through Supply of Machinery Regulations 2008. But in UK, the CE mark is replaced with the UK CE mark. Employer in the Europe have to ensure that any equipment they purchase for work use has the CE mark and written declaration. Moving forward toward the preventing access to dangerous parts of machinery. Access to dangerous parts of machinery should be prevented. The safeguards that are used to prevent access to dangerous machine parts should be applied during a hierarchy of control measures. The hierarchy of control measure is best understood by looking at a specific hierarchy created by the UK regulation, which set out the methods by which this must be achieved through provision of fixed enclosed guard that in case or surround the dangerous part of machinery. Other guards and protection devices such as interlock guard, self-adjusting guard, adjustable guard, pressure mat, trip devices, and two-hand controls. Protection appliances such as jigs, holders, and push sticks. Information, instruction, training, and supervision to the workers on the usage of these guards. Every one of these precautions has to be used where and to extent that is practicable. Practicable in this context means that if it can be done, for example, if it is possible, then it must be done. Moving forward toward the restricting use of work equipment. Use of work equipment should be where necessary be restricted to competent operators only who are trained to use it. This relates to all equipment where risk of serious injury to the operator or to other exists. For example, forklift truck use must be restricted to trained, competent driver. In addition, repair, modification, or maintenance of equipment should be similarly be restricted to designated competent people. For example, routine planned preventive maintenance of a forklift should be carried out by a competent vehicle mechanic. Moving forward towards the giving information, instruction, and training to workplace employees with regards to the work equipment use. Work equipment users should be provided with appropriate information, instruction, and training. Where the equipment is low risk, this requirement is simple to fulfill. For example, an office paper shredder can be used by staff who have read the instructions supplied by the manufacturer. With high risk machinery, more has to be done to fulfill this requirement to an acceptable standard. For example, an employer operating an industrial shredder capable of shredder wooden pallets should ensure that all operators receive specific training in the safe use of the equipment as well as written information. They should also check to ensure understanding of their training and information. Moving forward towards the work equipment usage, the users of work equipment should only operate equipment they are authorized to use, operate equipment in accordance with instruction and training, only use equipment for its intended purpose, carry out all necessary safety checks before using equipment. They should not use the equipment if it is unsafe. They should report defects of equipment immediately. They should not use equipment under the influence of drug or alcohol. This includes some medication which causes drowsiness. Keep equipment clean and maintain in safe working order. Users will therefore have to be provided with appropriate information, instruction, and training so that they are able to understand and follow these requirements. Moving forward towards the maintenance requirement, maintenance staff should be given specific information, instruction, and training tools so that they can undertake any maintenance activity with a minimum of risk to themselves and others. Also, they should understand the maintenance requirement of the equipment and are able to keep the equipment in safe working order. Work equipment should be maintained in a safe working condition according to the relevant legal standards and manufacturer recommendation. Maintenance can be carried out according to the various regimes such as planned preventive maintenance, conditional based maintenance, and breakdown maintenance. We're gonna discuss them each one in detail. So first, the planned preventive maintenance. Planned preventive maintenance is where servicing work is carried out at prescribed intervals and parts are replaced or changed irrespective of their condition. For example, oil in an engine might be changed every year regardless of the amount of use that the engine has received. Then, condition-based maintenance, where servicing is carried out and parts changed only when inspection indicated that use has caused deterioration. For example, the brake pad on a car might be inspected after every 6,000 miles, but only changed when they show signs of heavy wear and tear. Then the last one is breakdown maintenance. Breakdown maintenance is where maintenance is only carried out during repair. Whatever type of maintenance regime is used for an item of work equipment, maintenance staff must not be exposed to unacceptable risk during maintenance work. Maintenance work often creates greater risk for the staff involved because guards and employer have to be removed to allow access. Safety devices have to be removed or disabled. Equipment has to be partially or completely dismantled. Power source may be exposed, for example, electric supply. Stored power may be accidentally released, for example, compressed string, and also the capacitor in case of electrical equipment. Access may be awkward, for example, space constraint or work at height. Handling of parts may be difficult. Additional hazard may be introduced, for example, power tool hazards. Worker may be under pressure to complete the job, especially in the case of breakdown maintenance. A safe system of work should be developed for when maintenance work is carried out, and this may require the use of a permit to work and adequate levels of supervision. For some items of work equipment, it is foreseeable that deterioration of safety critical parts might occur, and it is possible for this part to be inspected without dismantling the equipment. It may be necessary to introduce some form of inspection regime. For example, the tire on a vehicle might go flat or become excessively worn, and it is an easy matter for the driver of the vehicle to carry out a pre-use inspection to check their condition. Moving forward toward the additional precautions that may be required during maintenance work, which are maintenance should only be carried out by competent staff. Power sources should be isolated and physically locked off during the maintenance work. Stored power should be released or secured to prevent accidental discharge during the maintenance work. Where power cannot be isolated, additional precautions are required. For example, covering live parts with insulating material, using additional PP such as insulating rubber gloves. If dangerous moving parts have to be accessed, additional precautions are required too. They should run at very slow speed rather than normal operating speed. They should fit maintenance guards that have been made specifically to allow minimum access to required areas only. Precautions should be taken to allow safe access, especially when working at height. Handling aids and equipment should be used to reduce manual handling risk during the maintenance. In certain instances, this routine inspection should be combined with a more detailed periodic inspection and testing. For example, pressure systems such as boiler and air receiver must be thoroughly examined and tested because they are subject to heavy stress. And if parts were to fail, they would fail catastrophically, leading to explosion. Periodic examination and testing of pressure systems should be carried out by competent engineer. And in some cases, competence and the standard of examination required is defined in legislation and local codes of practice. Moving forward towards the equipment controls and environmental factors. Equipment controls such as stop and start buttons should be well designed so they are easy to use, placed at suitable locations on the equipment. They should be easily identifiable, they should be kept in good working order, and they should be compliant with the relevant standards. It is particularly important that stop controls are easy to see and reach and that they override all other controls. By comparison, start controls are usually recessed and harder to operate accidentally. Many machines should also have emergency stops fitted. These are controls that bring the equipment to a safe stop quickly as possible. Emergency stop can be buttons or pull cords and should be positioned on or by the equipment. With easy reach of operators for large machines, this means that several emergency stop buttons may be fitted at various locations around the machine. In addition to the requirements discussed, there are some other basic physical requirements that work equipment should meet. It should be stable. This may mean bolting it to the floor or fitting outrigger jacks or stabilizers. It should be appropriately marked with label on control panel, say working load, maximum speed, etc. It should have appropriate warnings such as warning sign by dangerous parts and in some cases visible and audible warnings such as a flashing beacons and klaxons to warn of the startup or movement of machinery. The physical environment around the work equipment must also be considered, in particular lighting and space. Moving forward towards the lighting consideration when using any kind of equipment, the adequate general workplace lighting should be provided around equipment for the safety of both operators and others in the vicinity. Local lighting such as spotlights positioned above machinery might be required to give higher levels of light in critical areas. Lighting should be suitable for the type of equipment in use. Avoid lights that flicker when illuminating rotating machinery because of the stroboscopic effect, where the rate of flicker coincides with the rotation rate of the machinery, giving the impression that the machinery is rotating very slowly when in reality it is rotating quickly. Lighting should be suitable for the environment. For example, intrinsically safe lighting used in flammable atmosphere. As I have told earlier that intrinsically safe lighting are those which are spark proof and have explosion proof enclosure so that spark must not go outside of that explosion proof enclosure. Moving forward towards the markings of work equipment, all work equipment has to be marked in clearly visible manner, giving any relevant health and safety information such as stop and start controls, abrasive wheel rotation speeds, safe working loads, color coding of gas cylinders for recognition of contents, contents of storage vessels, and nature of hazardous contents. And in the last, color coding of pipe burn. Forward towards the warnings, all work equipment should incorporate any warning or warning devices that are appropriate for health and safety. These can be in the form of notices, requirements within permit work system, and safety signs. The presence of a safety sign warning, for example, of moving part, does not remove the need for guarding. Warnings are useful indication, but not a replacement for physical protection. Just keep in mind. Moving forward towards the space considerations, these considerations include that operators should have an adequate space to move around work equipment safely, and other people should be able to move around safely without coming into close proximity to dangerous parts or presenting a hazard to the operator.